He doesn't surf though.
Yeah, I do surf. Hey, everybody. All right, you guys can tell already the conversation's begun before we even went live. I'm Brian Altoonian, along with my co-host, Shawn Francis, and you're here for another episode of Just Two Dads. And today's guests are friends of ours that we have wanted to have on the show for quite some time. You're in for a great conversation. Cannot wait for you to hear from Navah and Matt Asner as we talk about their family center here on our episode of Just Two Dads. So welcome back, everyone. For all of those that are visiting us on Facebook Live, hello. Please, feel free to put comments in the comment section if you've got any questions for our guests or comments to make. Please let us know. They'll be able to see those comments. If you're catching us on YouTube, on our YouTube channel at We Are Just Two Dads, again, feel free to subscribe, share with your friends, put any comments there. We read everything, and just great to have all of you. And especially those of you listening on WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands and on podcast outlets, wherever you hear a great podcast. We hope that the information that we bring you is valuable and enlightening, entertaining, and a bit educational as well. So without further ado, I just want to, because we're going to be tight on today's show. We want you guys to hear from our guests because it's really a fascinating story. So without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to Shawn Francis. Say hello. I'm not even going to ask you how you're doing, Shawn, because I know how you're doing. Shawn lives a blessed life, folks. He tells us on a regular basis, and it is a good thing. So, Shawn, how you doing today, buddy?
Yeah.
I did it.
I always begin by saying that I'm so grateful and I'm so excited about today's show, and to the point where people probably wonder, is that real? I have a real problem here today, which is that I don't know where to begin because I'm always excited about our guests. But we have friends here today, people that come on the show, we become friends with them. These are amazing people, and I just can't wait to go ahead and get started. My biggest problem is going to be, like I said, where do we begin? So much gratitude, but welcome to the show, Matt and Navah Asner.
Thank you so much,
guys, for having us.
And I'll just say
sure.
If you had let us know you were on the radio in the Virgin Islands, we would have just shown up there and done this live.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So
next time,
let us know and we'll go there.
We'll do that. We'll do that next time. And then I should even ask: is that appropriate, or is it Matt Asner and Navah Paskowitz-Asner? What's the right way to go?
I answer by both. Okay. I'll always be a Paskowitz, and I'm very proud of the work that we've done as Paskowitzes in the world of special needs. But I'm married.
That's a perfect segue.
Like Gucci, I'm married into it. Now I'm an
That's the perfect segue, because you guys, like my family, are the epitome of a blended family, but you guys come from, your own path, each part of the special needs community. So what I'd like to do, and we're going to be really challenged to try and get it all in here today. And we're obviously going to talk about, Matt, your dad's legacy and his work with the special needs community and his great work, in film and television. But let's start with each of you, how you became members of the special needs community leading up to your union together. And then, of course, the great work you're doing at the center.
All right. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I'll go first because you're pretty long-winded.
All right, I'm long-winded.
No, I'll talk fast. I came into the world through my brother Israel, and Israel started Surfers Healing, which is an amazing surf therapy group for special needs individuals. And in those days, the only thing I knew about autism was Israel's severe nonverbal son, Isaiah. And to be honest, and God knows that he was listening, I used to go to these events and volunteer as a surf instructor. And I'd say, I'd look at my two typical kids and I'd say, thank you, God, for letting me have these two perfect children. And God was listening, and he knew that I needed to not be taught a lesson, but to be taught to think differently. And I believe in my heart that I was, shown my path. And so I subsequently had two autistic sons after that. And The only thing I knew in my life was surfing and health. And so, my youngest son was really going through a hard time with his autism, and I threw him in the water and I started doing surf therapy. And from there, I always wanted to be a life coach. I really felt strongly about mental health issues. I myself have anxiety disorder, and I couldn't afford to have to get the therapy that I needed at the time. I was a single mom of 4 kids, working 3 jobs. So, for me, to help other families, that was my goal. And so I started at a very religious organization called the Chabad. And I started as a life coach for special needs kids. But I saw again that the majority of our families were single parents. So I thought, what is happening here? It's not just about supporting the individual. It's about supporting the whole structure, the foundation of the family.
Yeah.
And that was my goal. I said, I knew what I was struggling from just a few years earlier. We have to not just support the individual. We have to support first the whole structure, the foundation of the family. So when I met Matt, I'll let you do your own story, but I felt strongly that what he was doing for other large organizations, it was kind of the same old, same old. And it took me many, many years to talk him into the fact that what they were doing, they were missing the main issue, which is rather than helping the one, we had to help these families that were fractured and falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
What
Tell
I
me
was
something.
the same old.
No, but I felt like
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
I'm saying organizations I thought were
No,
missing
I
the
know.
mark.
I just wanted to make clarification. No.
Let me ask one question. Navah, I know that you live here in Los Angeles, as we all do, but you grew up, I believe, in Hawaii. The organization you were talking about, was that here or in Hawaii?
No, my dad basically was one of the first and pioneers of surfing. So we started with surf instruction. We had the first surf camp in the world in 1970, I think the first camp was. And so we always were surfers. I was a professional surfer in my time. My brothers, I have 8 brothers. They were all, not all of them, but most of them professional surfers. So it was just kind of natural that my brother Israel would then, when his son was diagnosed severe nonverbal, he started this nonprofit, and he saw the benefits of surf therapy and water therapy. So he was the originator of surf therapy. And but we lived in Hawaii, we lived in Israel, we were nomads.
Right. I know. I know that of your story. And just so people know, especially those that are listening that might be avid surfers, why don't you go ahead and tell, especially because we're going to be talking about the legacy of both of your dads. Talk about tell everyone who your dad was and still is.
Well, my dad was not quite as famous as Ed Asner, but in his own right, he in
Depends who you ask.
Exactly.
Right.
Slater thinks my dad's more. But anyway, he brought the first surfboard to Israel in 1958, started the sport of surfing in Israel.
Wow.
And, he was friends with Duka Hanamoku and some of the most famous surfers in the world. And so starting the surf camp, surf industry is one of the biggest industries in the world. And we really were the originators of the surf instruction camp in 1970, as I said. So really, my dad died at 95 some years ago. And you go to Israel now, and surfing is a huge industry. And he is considered like Elvis in Tel Aviv. Everyone knows his name. And it's wonderful. And the surf camp is still going on strong, and Israel's still doing surfers healing. And it's wonderful.
Amazing.
I never told you this, but when I first shared with Matt we and Brian wasn't even working, we weren't even in the same business at the time. But when I first showed Matt what we did as far as financial services goes, and I told him that I had this idea of bringing it to the special needs community, he came to the office that I was working out of in Agoura Hills at the time, and having a conversation with one of the senior advisors there, one of the founders, who's actually big time surfer, very avid, because you guys weren't married yet. And Matt says, yeah, my girlfriend's family is really big in surfing. And he was like, oh, and then he just casually said, and he was so familiar. So your dad, was your dad a practicing doctor as well, or was his nickname
he
doc?
was
He was a doctor, right?
Stanford educated doctor. And when he met my mom was almost 100% Native American. He just went crazy and he gave up his whole, very easy life. And they went on the road. He used to take care of the Native people of America for free.
Right.
And you can watch the documentary Surfwise if you want to see more about my family. It's still available.
We're going to make sure we include it there on the screen for those that are actually watching. And so your dad was Dorian Doc Paskowitz, correct?
Yes, Doc Dorian
Yes.
Paskowitz.
Wow.
And I was lucky.
Wow.
I was lucky.
Blessed memory.
I was lucky enough to get to know him before he passed.
Yes,
so.
thank God. Thank
He's
God.
one of those people who, when you find out about them, you're kind of like, I sure wish I did get to know him.
Yeah, he was
Like
an
an amazing
incredible
individual.
guy.
Very, very interesting man.
Wow.
Terrible with money, though.
He was
terrible with money.
He was a lot like my father. He was a lot like my father. He was very unpredictable and surprising at times.
Very domaneering, very man-centric. I was
very
raised
intelligent,
fighting for my rights. As Matt knows,
Wow.
I fought for my rights my whole life.
Well, that's why we're perfect.
Yeah, we
match,
are. We're definitely
because-
the yin and the yang.
So tell us about your path and your introduction, Matt, which I'm familiar with, but I can never hear it too many times. And there's a lot of people that are going to hear it today for the first time and be delighted.
Well, I grew up on the sets of Los Angeles. My dad's Ed Asner, of course, and grew up on the set of Mary Tyler Moore and ran around those sets and became a producer of television and film. Did that for about 20 plus years. And while that happened, I was kind of awakened to what was going on in specifically special education, and the fact that everyone had to fight for it, and a lot of people, especially the under-resourced communities, were not getting the things they needed in the community. And this was like horrifying to me. I couldn't believe it. I just was shocked by the whole thing. The more I dove into it, the more I got upset about it. And so I started writing some comment pieces for the Huffington Post and got really involved in that. And then that kind of led to me becoming a leader at Autism Speaks for about 7 years.
That's when we connected. But your connection or introduction to the community goes further back through your family, your brother, correct?
Yes. Okay. Yes, it does. So my father, my father had a son when I was probably in my early 20s, and Charlie is autistic, and that was my first, other than Rain Man, that was my first view into autism. And it was eye-opening. It really was.
It's probably worth noting too, because prior to your brother Charlie being born, your dad, this is a statement. Some of this you don't know. Your dad was known as a fighter for not necessarily limited to the little guy, but the loud voice for anyone whose voice was not necessarily heard. And I found that out in the summer of 1982. I had a family friend that got me a summer job, and I wasn't even voting, so it wasn't about political affiliation, but there was an organization called American Democrats for Action, and it was a summer job that I had, and it was canvassing, making these phone calls, and I didn't meet him, but his picture loomed large in the office and everything, and it talked about his involvement and everything. So I'm sure him standing up for those who he felt did not have a voice played a large role in him doing that for your brother.
Huge. I mean, I think in terms of his role, in terms of being an advocate for people with for autistic people, it came out of his experience with Charlie. But it really does trace back to his early days, and I'll trace it back to his days in Chicago and Kansas when he was working at auto factories, and he was in both union and non-union shops, and he was not at that point in his life ready to speak up. And I think it haunted him.
That's risky. Yeah.
I think it haunted him for his young adulthood, that didn't speak up, and he didn't
Mhm.
take a leadership role. And I think when he finally was able to have the guts to do it, he really did it, and he did it often. And my dad was outspoken. He was
Mhm.
unpredictable. Like I said before, he was always fighting a cause. He was always fighting for the underdog, and he was always in people's faces, and that was him. And he passed that on to me, I'm sure. And that's
Mhm.
why we're doing, that's why I'm sure that's why, I do what I do. So flash forward. So my dad had an autistic son, Charlie, my brother, who's now in his early 30s and living in New Haven, working in the community there. And I had my own son with autism, and Navah had two sons with autism. And that spurred me into action. I wanted to change the world for him. So that made me kind of leave my life as a producer and director. And I started, like I said, working with Autism Speaks for about 7 years. And then for 2 years worked at Autism Society of America.
Right.
And then during my work at Autism Society of America, Navah said to me, let's do this. So we did this, and we created the Ed Asner Family Center. And we've been going strong for 4 years. 4 years.
And that's the part that I've always wondered about, which we've never talked about, because as you said, when we met, you were at Autism Speaks.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a fantastic thing when you're with this well-known entity that is known to, represent people in the autism community, and you could rest on laurels, so to speak, by remaining there, but to then take on, after you guys get together and say, you know what, let's start something that is ours for that community. That is a Herculean effort. So tell us a little bit about not just your mindset and coming together and doing that, but my son Elijah and I went there for your son's birthday party. What was that? Just before, I think, COVID hit.
Yeah.
And it was set up like a club. And I had pictures on social media, and I sent my mom a picture, and Elijah was dancing. I was like, "Hey, Elijah, up in the club." And she was like, "What do you mean up in the club? Where is he?" I was like, "There's Cheetos and Gatorade. Trust me." But as I was looking around at everything,
always
That's a pretty
Cheetos.
requisite. I'm gonna take this one because I definitely it took years. Matt says we've been in business for 4 years. I've been doing this for 6 years because it took me about 2 years to talk him into it. And
yeah, tell us what it takes to kind of bring that to life. Because as I stood there looking around, I was like, what does it take to get this off the ground? And what does it take to keep it going?
Well, the thing is, you talk about sitting on your laurels. Matt really at that point was, we had 6 kids. We had 6 kids in 6 different schools, 2 private schools. And, to jump off that cliff of, a regular paycheck and full medical insurance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was really hard for me to talk you into this. I remember that you were really nervous, but I think,
of course,
it's scary.
It's terrifying.
But I think the one thing that I said to you, I remember you really believed that what we were doing and what we were creating was something we'd never seen before, but we so desperately needed as parents ourselves. And it couldn't have failed, in my opinion. I don't go into anything half-assed. I give my heart and soul and might into it. And I believed in my heart that, we both had such different dreams and different pillars of importance for the center. Mental health and health and wellness was everything to me. And for Matt, it was about arts and music and the enrichment parts. So there was nothing in the community where you could do all of that in one place.
Yeah.
And to me, the missing element of what we were both involved in, it was just our blinders were on with autism. And I had such close friends in the Down syndrome community. I was so connected with parents with kids with Fragile X and CP from my own experiences with surf therapy. And I thought, the one thing I don't want to do is do another autism thing. I want the entire special needs community to feel welcome in our center. And, my mission statement was, because I feel, and this is a controversial statement, but I feel myself to be neurodivergent. I felt very strongly that we should, from day one, employ special needs people. So we, this was 2016. We didn't have a space. We didn't have money. We didn't have anything. And we found this wonderful organization who was willing to donate us space. And I said, look, there is nothing in the community right now that is a summer camp experience that's expressive arts based. So I got all of these amazing people together, incredibly musicians and artists. And really, I count Joanne Laura of blessed memory, the amazing Joanne Laura, who started Autism Movement Therapy, for really being our muse and our director for the first Camp Ed. And that's how we started the center. We started with Camp Ed, and our first camp, 80% of the instructors and the counselors were autistic, autistic self-advocates.
I'll just add to that. Being at Autism Speaks and being at Autism Society of America, I think they're both national organizations. And I was at Autism Speaks at the local level for, I think, 4 years, and at the national level for 3 years. And I think it's really important that I say this. I think the world of nonprofits, I think, is changing, and I think it has changed. And I think that I've seen a shift, at least. And I think people really want to see what's going on in the community. They want to see what you're donating to the community, what you're giving to the community, and I think where it goes. Yeah. And I think for me, and I've nothing but great things to say about both of those organizations. I gave them many years of my life, and I did so proudly. And what I did at these organizations, I'm very proud of. But I feel that our contribution to the community, when I saw what our contribution would be and is to the community, I think that really set the bar for me. And I think, I'm very glad that Navah twisted my arm into jumping that cliff. And I think we've done incredible things in the last 6 years, and I'm very proud of what we've done here.
You do an annual fundraiser around the holidays, which I love. Will you guys talk about that a little bit? I think some people may have seen the most recent installation on social media, but will you talk about that a little bit? How that all came about?
Are you talking about the poker term? Or are you talking about
It's a Wonderful Life?
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life.
So, the pandemic hit, and most of our fundraising is done through events, and so we were faced with this big hill to climb, and one of my favorite movies, one of my dad's favorite movies, probably one of your favorite movies, because I've made you like it. I made
we talk about it almost all the time. Yeah.
I think I asked you to marry me while we were watching that. So
wow.
So we love It's a Wonderful Life, and I just thought, what if we do something where we create a situation where we can read It's a Wonderful Life, and we can have all these celebrities kind of step in and fill these roles, and have a fun kind of Zoom reading of It's a Wonderful Life. So we did the first year, and
I think you loved the idea of Ed being Mr. Potter.
Well, yeah, I mean, the idea that my dad could be Mr. Potter was awesome.
Was really,
because he's built to play that. He was built to play that role, and he did play that role the first year. And we had Pete Davidson play George Bailey. We had Ellie Kempner play Mary. Maud Apatow, who's absolutely amazing in Euphoria, played Violet. Mia Farrow. We had all these incredible actors step in.
Mark Hamill also, did you not?
Well, Mark Hamill was in last year. It was in
last year.
The recent one.
The most recent one. Yeah.
But the first year we had Carol Kane played Clarence. Just a great cast of characters, and we had it on Zoom. It was wonderful, and we thought it was so fun to do that we thought, wait a second here, why don't we do it again? And why don't we recast it? Why don't we do it again?
And we thought, we'll
recast
never, ever.
I was alone in
outdo
that, by
one.
the way. I was the lone person saying we should do this again. We should do this again.
You were.
And I kind of twisted arms.
Well,
and,
I didn't think we could ever top Pete Davidson. I really didn't.
and we did.
Wow.
We did. We got Jason Sudeikis to play George Bailey.
Yeah.
Right.
Last time.
And Rosario was
Rosario
amazing.
Dawson to play.
That's right.
Mary. Mark Hamill played Clarence. George Wendt, who's actually Jason Sudeikis' real life uncle, played Uncle Billy.
That's right. He's his uncle. Yeah.
An amazing, I'm forgetting many people, but we had an amazing group of people that were, and the great thing about it is they do it. They have so much fun doing it. It's so much fun to do it. And it's a long evening. It's not a short evening. It's a long film. But it's a lot of fun. And
we have our autistic actors too. So we had
both years we've had our actors from the center jump in and have fun with roles too.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, not just from the center; they're professional
and
actors.
professional actors.
Yeah.
Will you do it again even after the pandemic? Would you guys do it live?
Well, I think people were saying that we should do an in-person gala last year, in 2021, and I thought, well, wait a minute, this is an opportunity to kind of give people something while they're sitting at home, and we can give people something, worldwide. It's not something that, it doesn't pigeonhole us to Los Angeles.
Sure.
So I think we are going to do it again.
I remember seeing a reading of of course, now I say I remember it, I don't remember what it was, but there was a live reading at the Skirball Center, and there must have been 200 people in the audience. And I was fascinated at hearing a reading of a well-known production that's just so different than our normal experience of seeing the original black and white film. Even if you did it live and had it simulcast, on Zoom or for everybody to see, you get that global audience. But it is fascinating.
I think doing it live. See, the great thing about doing it on Zoom, and I think people will tune in because it's exciting to see all these people kind of do it. And it is like an annual film. It's a film that everyone kind of looks forward to,
and it's timeless.
You never get tired of it. At least I never get tired of it.
I never get tired of it.
Never. Matter of fact, I learned something new every time I look at it. I was like, why did I not receive that the same way before? Yeah. And there's never a dry eye in our house every year.
But I think that having people do it from their homes, there's something, there's something original about that. There's something that I think we'll keep about that. And I think doing it, first of all, I think it's going to be impossible to get all those kind of A-level actors in one place at one time, unless you're paying them a lot of money.
I think that's one of the reasons why they agreed to it. It's because they could do it from their pajamas
and so I think the idea of doing it, live on Zoom is much more realistic than getting a bunch of people in the room.
All right, I'll acquiesce this time, but I'm just still going to be one of those that every year I'm going to say, this would have been
never. The one thing I've learned in my 10 plus years in this world, in nonprofit and this kind of world, is never say never.
Yeah.
Never say never.
Yeah, it was such a phenomenal production this last year. Well, actually, I saw a little bit of the first year's episode, but it's something that I think you're going to find people are going to be drawn to wanting to do it because it's such a classic. Anyways, just on that point. So that's
the thing. We wanted to build something. We wanted to build something that was perennial. That was that was there all the time,
and people would look forward to.
Yeah,
for sure. And other ways that you raise money for the center. What are other things that you do? Because obviously, as a nonprofit organization, you live on grants.
Always looking for ways of doing that.
I think this goes back to our original history, which is, what Matt does best is create ideas. And I think I do that too.
Yeah.
And I get a little crazy and he puts me back on track because I need to be reined in a little bit. But the one thing that he was doing at other organizations was creating these ideas and creating these events that nobody else was doing. I mean, Oddfest was an amazing thing that you did for another organization, but I knew
for Autism Society.
I knew that he could, that he had a million ideas, and that he could just as easily do that within our own organization. And that's the one thing that I really give Matt credit for, is he's incredibly creative about looking outside the box. And we are not, and we have never been funded by regional center or organizations like that, because it keeps us too constricted in our concepts of what we want to do, which is very organically grown programs. And sometimes when you're on a regional center or a government supported funding, you have to stay within those parameters. And this is a family center, and we have all ages here. And that's something that was very important to us. But I think that we have so many ideas together that we've only just begun to create,
That's fantastic.
And
Tell us. Go ahead, Brian. Go ahead.
You have just the one location for the
for now.
That's what I was.
For now.
That's where I was going.
I mean, I think it's always been our goal to expand and to look for other places to be. And it's the pandemic, I'm not gonna lie, it hit us hard. It hit everyone hard. It was horrible, and it's still we're still kind of licking our wounds from that. That's I'm sure everyone else is, and it kind of put any kind of expansion on a deep hold. Once we're safely out of the pandemic, and I think we can kind of start looking at ways we can do that, which hopefully will be soon. I don't know.
And you guys have such
when we pick you up in the Just Two Dads plane to go to the U.S. Virgin Islands, maybe we'll just as a possible expansion. Sorry, Shawn, you were going to ask a question.
No,
satellite office.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Right, why not?
And you know what's funny? When Matt has posted things on social media, like pictures of his childhood and stuff like that, there's pictures of like him and his dad like on a sailboat or on a beach on St. Thomas in the 70s, and I'm sitting there thinking, this weird, like on a Saturday in the 70s, I'd spend the day at the beach, come home worn out, and didn't really get into Mary Tyler Moore, but I'd catch the end of it because I was really ready for Carol Burnett to come on. So what that means is, because the humor I was so small, the humor was above my head, but then as an adult, I think it's just so hilarious. But I'm looking at those pictures and I go, so that means that, on a given day, when he took that picture with his dad, I wonder if I was on that beach at that day. Who knows? It's wild. But
I might have passed you on the boat. I don't know. That was one of the greatest vacations I ever had with my family. We were, I would think it was 1978 or 79. I'm not sure which year it was. But we went to the Virgin Islands for 2 weeks and just kind of on a boat and just basically island hopped
and just forgot time. Yeah.
It was a different experience. Incredible. It was like, wonderful. And it was amazing that we could do that. And it was just great moment in my family history.
That's awesome.
So the center's address for those that are watching this versus listening on the platforms and everything, we've got the address, that's popped up on the screen and is on the chat. So you can go there and see some of the things that are available, but
which one do you
tell
have?
Those, what do we've got? It's in the chat. We've got, okay, there it is right there. The Ed Asner Family Center.org.
Oh yeah. Address.
Yeah.
And
so
go ahead.
No, go ahead, Navah.
I was just going to say, this year we are creating and we have debuted programs that are really, I'm really excited about, and they're really totally different than anything we've done before.
Well, tell everyone, because again, they can go to the site, but I think it's so great to hear now. You've got such a wide array of things. In addition to things that you guys offer at the center, you guys did what was the Pixar trip? Was that what movie was that? There was
it was Toy Story 4.
It was the last Toy Story. Yeah, you guys
Yeah.
had a field trip. Yeah,
Yeah, that was fun.
Oh, that
I
was
think what
wonderful.
you're doing is great.
We had a
A family trip.
a premiere screening of Toy Story 4 with a tour of Pixar. It was at Pixar, and
Mhm.
so
Amazing.
people had to kind of fly there or drive there or whatever, and it was awesome. It was a very exciting thing, and
We definitely have to do some more
Pixar's been great
family
to us.
events, though. I think
Yeah.
that was one of the things that we had planned right before the COVID hit. Is we
Yeah.
had some ideas for a family camp that I'm really excited to try to bring back once we're back to normal. And our opening, our grand reopening was supposed to be in January, and now we've had to stagger that, and we're opening up fully in March,
Good.
but we are debuting. Our first program is going to start next Monday, which is the dating spectrum. And the dating spectrum is really something that is very close to my heart. During the pandemic, one of our autistic spokespeople who works with the center, she wanted to start a social club. And she started Movie Chat, which had become from 4 participants to now they have to close it at 34 every week.
Wow.
So through that, the social clubs kind of branched out, and Matt and I binged watched Love on the Spectrum.
I still have not seen that. I need to.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
the first one. And we were just so moved by this. But the thing that really inspired me was the fact that they had a relationship coach, because that spoke to my old life coaching background. And, I came back, and my mental health director and I really are partners, and we create all the mental health programs together. And I said to her, I feel like this is something we can do at the center. And, we debuted it last year, even through COVID and everything. We've had now 3 sessions of the dating spectrum. And each time we do it, what makes it unique and unlike any other program is that it's co-created by an autistic self-advocate, and it's co-run by an autistic self-advocate. So
Wow.
in the previous programs that I've seen, you have these professionals who are telling autistic people how to feel on a first date and how they should react and how they should. And to me, that's just really
Impractical at the least.
but it's not.
Say-
And so, it was important to me, and it was everything to me that we had, a licensed marital therapist and an autistic self-advocate for each session of the dating spectrum. So now we're on session 3 that starts on Monday. And this time we're going to have a male perspective in life coach Tom Island, who's amazing. And he's going to be helping Krissa through this 8-week course. We also are starting Sex Ed 101, which is another kind of branch of our social clubs.
That's so important.
Yeah, it's very
important.
8th grade, like sex ed class. So many of our adult participants needed that before they started dating spectrum. So we felt like we wanted this foundational class to help them in their journey. They go to this and then they kind of graduate to the dating spectrum. And then we have all of our regular enrichments. So we have fine art, we have arts and crafts, which is an all abilities class. We're starting clown school, which what could be funner than that?
How awesome.
Yeah. And
Clown School's 100% free.
Clown School, we got a great grant, and it's 100% free. It's an in-person class. We have our choir that's starting back up. I don't know if you guys saw the center choir during the gala, but it's a wonderful thing that's taught by our music therapist. So there really is something for everyone this year, a lot for adults.
Didn't you guys have a cooking class of some kind or something of that sort? I thought
our cooking
culinary
instructor went back to school, so we've tabled that and we brought in the Clown School. But we do have, we have Camp Ed 3 times a year now. We're now on almost the 8th Camp Ed, which is my baby.
And cooking has been let me just say something here. All this vision is Navah. So, I mean, Navah gave me kudos about the ideas that I have, but a lot of what you're hearing here is coming from her head. Most of it, actually. I don't think I contributed anything, but
I'd say all of it.
But no, she has a vision, and I give her all the credit for that, because we would be nothing without programming.
Well, I think
And-
you run the events and I run the programs
Yeah.
and the mental health. And I think it's important that we each have our lanes. And I blur the lanes more than I should because, again, fighting. I fight for my rights. I was raised with 8 boys. I can't stop fighting. But the main thing is,
Beautiful.
you know, I feel really strongly about the fact that everyone deserves to have mental health support. Everyone deserves to have enrichments for their children and to not have to just fall back on ESY. You know, 75% of our camp is still fully scholarship participants because I came from that background, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And Maddie, turn your phone off.
I turn my phone off.
So anyway, it's, you know, everything we do, every penny that we fundraise, for me, it's about being able to grant another family a scholarship. And it drives them crazy because I do it way more than I should. But I'm a sucker in general.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Crazy. Doesn't try. Really.
Wow. Well, you know, we always approach the end of the show with a question that we think carries some weight, is somewhat unique, but yet relates to everybody. And, you know, our ability to change the world and make it a better place is always tied to our willingness or our ability to change ourselves. So that being said, give us an example of one thought, philosophy, or belief that you really held dear and felt really strongly about that you no longer believe to be true.
That we really felt strong. Well, that
you no longer believe to be true.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I held it dear. I mean, I think it was a misconception. The one thing that jumps to my mind is before I knew anything about autism, I was under the impression, falsely, that that if you were autistic, you had no empathy. And the one thing that I can say about all of the autistic people I've met in my experiences is every one of them has shown me this incredible capacity for empathy, probably more than most people, I think. And I think that I think we've grown out of that false narrative that autistics don't have empathy. I think we've grown out of that. I hope so. I don't know. I'd be interested if you did a man on the street interview with people who, you know, asked them, you know, these misconceptions about autism.
Not enough, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree.
Probably right. But you know, to me, assuming intelligence all the time, that's something that's been very important to me, and it's shaped everything I do. I know it's shaped everything Navah's done. Assuming intelligence, assuming that there's always someone there. There's always a person there. There's always someone inside, even if they can't communicate. There's someone there. There's a personality there. Yeah. There's a thinking, loving human being who's probably at times very frustrated, who needs respect and who garners respect.
And I know I remember Shawn's son reminded me of Eddie because he's constantly kissing his dad and hugging his dad. That's Eddie for sure. So that's.
What about you? What?
I think I'm saying I would go to what I thought then, like when my youngest was diagnosed. I mean, I was one of those militant moms who believed, you know, I knew best and you know, lighted up blue and all that. And I think what really changed my thought was working hand in hand, day in day with my autistic self-advocate friends and really understanding from an actual autistic's perspective of what they go through and the challenges they have. Even, you know, my friends who are super, you know, they need basically no support at all. outwardly,
Right.
but they internally struggle, and they struggle with things that we can't even comprehend. And I think, understanding that we're so at odds in our community. And it makes me sad, but I so understand in a very unique way now, in a very personal way, what both sides are understanding and what both sides are feeling so passionately. And it makes me really want to be that person who can be in the middle and say, look, everyone's right. Everyone believes in their heart that they're doing the best for their child, or they're doing their best as a self-advocate, trying to get their voices heard. And I just wish we could come together a little bit more in our community, because I feel we're very fractured and at odds with each other. And it's unfortunate, because I think that I know people who are college level kids who really need just as much support sometimes as the verbal friends that I have. And I just wish everyone would listen to each other a little bit more.
Well, I think that just jumping in here, I think that is that's something that I've noticed, ever since I've been involved in this community, is that there is fracture. There is definitely fracture, and I think from my experience, we all have our own paths. We're all doing our own thing. I think people tend to be a little myopic about their paths, so that when you're going down a path that's difficult and that's challenging, it becomes all consuming, and it becomes your mission. It becomes your statement in life. So I think you're right. Opening our eyes to what everyone's going through, and understanding that what I'm going through is just as important as what you're going through, Shawn or Brian, what you're going through, or Navah, what you're going through, or what anyone's going through. We all have our own reality, and and our reality is righteous.
I was just going to say, as right as you think you are, you're 500 times more right. Total transparency here. Brian and I were guests on someone else's on a podcast, and in my effort to share with people that you don't have to understand where someone is coming from in order to respect their point of view, in my effort to do that, I will usually go out of my way to let it be known how foreign a person's position on a certain thought, lifestyle, or whatever it might be, in order to say, as foreign as it is to me, I don't have to understand it in order to respect that, or respect your right, so to speak. And I consider myself to be a fairly conscious person. Most people that know me know that about me. But my point is that, Brian pointed out something to me in terms of just conversation, making sure, hey, somebody that doesn't know you might not hear the part about you trying to step in their shoes when you put so much emphasis on how foreign their shoes are to you. And so the point is that we can never, ever, ever tire of our attempt to be more childlike and less childish, and just remain curious about somebody else's point of view. And unless someone is being disrespected as a person, or committing a crime or something like that, certain things need to be looked at as just things that are not necessarily good or bad, but that's just the way something is. And try to really get into that person's shoes before arriving at a judgment. And that's not as easy as it sounds.
Well, I think there's one thing we all share. As parents, there's one thing we all share, and that is that we want the best for our children. We want
Definitely.
the best for our adults with autism. And we have hurdles that are placed in front of our kids, and we want to find the best ways of getting them over those hurdles, and that's really what everyone wants,
right?
So we all
neurotypical or not, or
we all have that in common.
Yep. Agreed.
And I think we just have to come together more.
I think it's just more about listening and less about shouting at each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. More questions and statements. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and this it folds in as we end this episode. I'll say this. First of all, love having you, Shawn Hall, who's our producer out in Hawaii, who's sent us a quick note and said, "Oh, we've got to have them on again because this is a great conversation." By the way, we were guests on your podcast the very beginning, and it was one of the things that inspired us to do our own podcast to kick
Aw.
off Just Two
Yay.
Dads. So
Mhm.
thank you for giving us the
There's-
to give
There can
inspiration.
never be too many podcasts.
And it's not about this this subject for sure,
No.
and enough people out there. So, and what you were just saying, Matt, at the end, empathy and love is what I always say to it's what's needed more now than ever. We don't know other people's situation, what they're going through. So the more that we can express some empathy and have some consideration for what other people are going through, the better this world will be. And if we look through lenses of love, the world looks like a better place. So we are grateful to you both for the work that you are doing and furthering your father's legacy, Matt. Navah, your father's legacy as well. I'm envisioning surf camps all over the country, honestly, especially for children with different needs. And we thank you both for your contribution to the community and to us and to this podcast. And really
Thank you
blessed
guys
to be
so
friends with you
It's our
both.
pleasure.
And hopefully we'll have another community event and we'll see you all here very soon.
We can't wait. Thank you. And thank you everybody for listening in and watching us live on Facebook. And thanks again for being here for another episode of Just Two Dads. We'll see you
Thank
all
you.
soon.